John is in a basement mixing.
Good morning. Yeah, my name is Mike Hankert. I am not from here, Verona. And so I'm going to rely on others for the history of the place, but I can tell you about how to move a house. That's actually not that hard. It's inch by inch. But anyway, so I made a little list here. I think it takes 5 things to pull a project like this together. Sure. The first is a love of old buildings, and I think I'm kind of speaking to the choir here on that one. But we have people that come into that office building, and I own another one in Colorado that I'll talk about a little bit that we've converted into office space. And I hear on a regular basis, clients come in and say, "This is great," and you don't really typically walk into an office building and say, "This is a lovely place," right? These old buildings, it's just a pleasure to be in them, more so than a modern building. You have to have a love of that, because these projects are not always fun. They're definitely not free, and they're a ton of work. So you need to have that love. The second thing you need is an old house. And you have to get it at a good price. I like free. That's my favorite. So I've approached some people, "Hey, can I, might have that structure," and they try to sell it to you. They have no idea then what it really takes, because you need to start out with free. Then you need a piece of land to put it on, right? That's fairly easy, but you do need to have a place for it. And then you need a reasonable path between the two. There's an old house up on Mineral Point that's been abandoned for years near the Cuna Mutual. And I looked at moving that. It's a beast. You'd have to split it in half and get it under bridges. It's just not feasible to move a house, even from Mineral Point down to here, let alone from another city or state or something ridiculous like that. So you really need a short path between the two. And fifth, you need kind of a crazy quarterback, yours truly. You need someone who is nutty enough to take this on. Until you've done it once or twice, it's just ridiculously unknown. My wife's parents pretty much thought I was nuts. So yeah, you need those 5 things. So number 1, a love of old houses. I have that. I don't know where it comes from. I have it. My wife has it. We've always lived in old houses. I grew up in Maine. I had a barn up the street from me that was 1765 that we used to play in. So, out in northern New England, places are a lot older in general than they are in Wisconsin, and as you move west, just natural outgrowth of the expansion of the country. But, my parents did fix up an old house once. I remember that, but I don't know. I don't know where it comes from. So, it's 2003 now. I'm living in Colorado with this lovely crew. This is my family. And so we moved to town. It's kind of a funny story about how we came here. We were visiting my wife's sister in Fitchburg, and my wife, unbeknownst to me, gets on the internet and finds out that this little ditty is for sale. This is the Hoffman House on 100 Park Ave here in Verona. That's my house. That's where I love it. It's just wonderful. And everyone says, "Oh, it's a great house," they congratulate me. I had nothing to do with building this house. I just bought it, and luckily they hadn't messed with it too much. As John Scher, who we like to have over for dinner, can attest, the woodwork inside is beautiful. But anyway, we were living in Colorado, and my wife comes and looks at this house and falls in love with it. I come look at it. 3 days later, we owned it. So I guess we're moving to Wisconsin. And I own 3 houses and a business. I had staff in Colorado, and it's like, okay, well, I guess we've got some wheels to put into motion here. So the day we moved here was like the day after the triple murder. So that was a little ominous. And like, nice town you got here, but it's worked out pretty well. So this is I went to Google Earth. This is from 2003. So this is the lot on which that house got moved, that I moved it. This is my house. You can't really see it in the trees. This is my neighbors, and this is that old west-looking, used to be the Natural Health Works building. So that's where we're at. So in 2003, we moved to town. I look out my back door, and I see this vacant lot is for sale. So we had some extra money from one of the houses we sold in Colorado, so we just bought it. Have no idea. This is part of the crazy. No idea what I'm doing. Just moved to town. Sure, let's buy the lot. It was just kind of to control my own destiny. And I could see someone putting in a car wash or something there that I didn't want. Interesting little tidbit is that just prior to me buying it, they moved a house off of that lot. I don't know if y'all knew that, but there was a house on that lot, and it now sits up on Aspen Ave right off of Nine Mound. This is it right here. It's the best picture I could find. It's kind of been fixed up nice, as you can see. So that's a little ironic. And I think there was also an old stone telephone switch house.
It was a Wisconsin Farm and Lake building.
Yeah, like a Sears block.
The local engineer that did all the work for Wisconsin Farm and Lake kept his truck in there and other equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so I get to town, that house has been moved off, and we buy the lot. Then, like 2 weeks later, I pick up the Verona Press, and I read an article that our good friend Carl is expanding. He has now purchased the house from your family, and the house is going to be torn down, I believe is what the article said. So I had done some house moving, which I'll get to, and so I start putting pieces together, and I go over and I say, Carl, can I have a look? So I look at the house. It's got decent siding, decent windows, decent roof, decent, I mean, there was a lot of rough stuff, but there was enough there. Like some of these houses, they're just too far gone. You know, some of these ones you see that are rotted out, you can't take. There's only so much you can do, but this one was savable in my opinion. So I asked Carl if I could have it. And Carl being Carl said, sure. So, you know, I tried not to hold him up too much, and house movers are an interesting lot, and so that caused a bit of a rift, but he was very generous, and so I did get my negotiated price. So this, of course, is the picture that Jesse dug up. This is the house in 1932, I believe, ish. Right here on Schumann. This is the pump house of which you spoke about a moment ago, and of course there were houses all along Schumann, I believe, at that time. So now I've got the love of old houses. I've got the old house, and I got a lot. So, you know, the pieces are starting to come together. Yeah. Okay, so number 3, you need number 4, you need a short and painless path between the two. Again, even Mineral Point would be too far. So it doesn't get much better than this. I kind of, I started walking and driving the route. You look at trees, you look at power lines, because all those things have to come down. And in this case, the only thing that needed to be done was the lights, the red lights at the corner of, Verona Road in Maine, had to be swung out of the way. So I had to pay the City of Madison to come down with a lift truck the night of the move, swing the red lights out of the way, and come back afterwards. But that was the only thing that had to be done. Sometimes you have to drop big trees or power lines in order to do this, but I was fortunate. So this is the house. Now we have kind of taken possession of it, if you will. And that's it as we've kind of started to clear the land. So let me talk a little bit now about what it takes to do this. So you see these holes starting to get punched in the foundation here. So the first thing you got to do is you got to clear the land around the house and dig down a little bit. And then you got to start punching holes, depending on the kind of house that you're moving. Brick houses, I'll show you in a minute, are way harder to move. Wood frame house, the estimated weight on this is like 75 tons, I think it is, which sounds like a lot, but it's not too bad. And so, I don't know if you can see it from this picture, but you put 2 main steel beams, one like this and one like that, running underneath the house. And then you have cross beams that sit up on top of those beams. And so the house is still on the foundation. You've cut holes in the foundation, not too many. Apparently you can only cut so many holes before you have a problem. And then you get your steel kind of slid. So you need a little room to move too. It would be hard to move a house that's, in a corner with other houses, because you have to get these big steel beams underneath there. This is a pictures of the inside beforehand. There were a few cracks in the plaster, and I was just curious if I'd have more at the end of this thing. You'd think you would, but you really don't. These guys can really do this. So this is a kind of a funny story. That was the old chimney is behind there, and so Carl has given me the house. I have a house mover on the hook, but apparently these guys are a rough lot. And this particular group apparently moved a house illegally and got busted, like pulled over. You get driving down the side of the road with a house and get pulled over. Didn't have a permit, and so they were in some hot water. They didn't tell me any of this, so weeks are ticking by. They're not calling me back. I'm like, hey guys, where are you? Carl's like, hey, where are you? One day I'm sitting in my office, I get a phone call, and this guy goes, do you want the chimney? And I said, who's this? This is the house movers, we're over here. And so they had started to destroy like this wall, and so I come running over there. And granted, they had been AWOL for like a month, and then all of a sudden they're in the house with sledgehammers. And this is how they operate. Not the most professional group in the world, but there's only so many of them out there, so you got to deal with them. So anyway, I told them to put the sledgehammer away, and that wall was going to get moved anyway, so it didn't really. This is just some of, this is what it looked like inside. So this is, yeah, she's chuckling. This is the old pink room. This is now my office, actually. And part of the person that you need to have some vision here, because some people look at this stuff and just say, don't see anything beyond what they see immediately. I thought I had a before and after on this. Let's see if I do. Well, that's up in the attic. Give me just a sec here. Yeah. So you have to be able to see that can become that. And it's a lot about the floors. Those hardwood floors, I have a 100-year-old house that I still own in Colorado, original hardwood floors, and they're gorgeous. They're just absolutely gorgeous. And this house too, that's really a big part of the charm. So again, you have to be able to see that and know that after a couple thousand hours of painstaking work, you can get to that. So this is really the essence of a house move right here. This is called a crib pile. I don't know why. Cribbing. These are just wood. They're like railroad ties that have been cut down. They're probably, I don't know, maybe a foot, maybe 10 inches square. And this is a jack right here that's much like the one in the picture. You can buy these at Farm and Fleet. This thing will lift 40,000 pounds, and a child could do it. So it's really a game of inches. This jack is hydraulically powered, but it doesn't have to be. They used to use old screw jacks. But you're basically going to lift up the house and slide another beam in, and then let it set down, and then go do it. You do it two at a time. I'll get to that in a minute. So you can see that this is the big steel beam that's running along the length of the house, and these are the cross beams that are now lifting up the joists. And you have 4 crib piles, one in each corner of the house. And the key is to always lift 2 at a time, the right 2. If you lift it like this, and this, and this, you can do that all day long, and you can go up, 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 up 6 inches at a time. But if you twist it, that's when all the plaster is going to crack, right? If you lift one corner, you always have to lift 2 corners at the same time. And you don't want to go up, 10 feet and have it like that. And again, it's a game of inches. So 6, 12 inches at a time, up she goes. This is just another picture of the steel beams. Again, that's the big, massive steel beam. There's 2 of these. And these are all the cross members. And then those are the wooden joists of the house that, of course, ultimately is what's getting lifted. Just some more pictures of cracks to document. So this is an important piece of equipment here. This is the manifold or the hydraulic. It's just, I mean, this is what lifts the house. It's just a little motor like what you'd have on your lawnmower. And so you have four tubes coming off it, one going to each of the 4 jacks. And then there's valves that you can open up. So you basically want to open up 2 valves, lift her 6 inches, let the guys underneath do the wood, put some more wood under it, lift the other 2 6 inches, and you just rock it back and forth, up you go. Once you get it all in place, you know, the lift actually doesn't take much time at all. So now the house has now been slid. So you have a 3rd set of beams that comes in, and so the house was here, and then you have to slide it off the foundation first, right? You don't. That's step 1. So we had to slide it into what's that street behind Miller's there? Well, no, the one between Ace and Park. Yeah, it's Park. So we had to close Park and slide it into that. And so this is what it slides on. These things this has little rollers in it. And so these are the main beams, these are the slider beams, and you lift the house up, you slide that sucker under there, and now your house is on wheels. And you're just going to slide the whole thing. You're going to tow it with a skid steer, essentially. Just another picture of it being now like off the foundation and kind of heading over into Park Lane. Any questions so far?
How high do you have to lift it, Mike? You said it was quick, but like an hour, half hour?
Well, no, I mean, you want to plan for the day, but I mean, it doesn't take like days and days. And, you know, within the course, once you get everything set up, get the beams under there and the crib pile set up, a couple of hours, and you're only lifting it, you know, enough to clear the foundation. You're not lifting it very far. Yeah, well, ultimately, as you'll see, you turn it into a truck, so you have to get, you know, truck tires under it, so they're about this tall. So you probably have to lift it about 4 or 5 feet all told.
And you could save the chimney didn't fall off the side of it.
We actually ended up destroying the chimney because modern houses, you really don't use the chimney. Modern furnaces and everything are side vents, and you can save the chimney, but you have to support it. So it's kind of a big deal. So we ended up taking it out. And in these old houses, you know, you turn it into office space like I do. You know, space is a premium, and a chimney's like 2 or 3 feet by 2 or 3 feet. That's actually significant. It can turn a room. You can enlarge a room by getting rid of the chimney. So.
Question? Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So there was a well back on the backside. Did that make a problem moving it?
A cistern? No. I mean, the old foundation and all that, I left that. That was Carl's problem.
Yeah.
So the ground, the site, the cistern, that didn't get in our way at all. Did I see?
The cribs, what keeps them from sinking down as the house goes up?
A good question. You know, they're on the. Oh, sorry. The question was, what prevents the crib piles from sinking into the ground as you put the weight of the house on them? And they will sink a little bit, but you know, this is sitting on the slab in the basement. My one in Colorado, we didn't have that, so it was just on the dirt. So you'll have a soil guy come in and do a test on the soil bearing capabilities. But you know, you spread them out. You get enough area underneath, and they don't just sink into the ground. But it's a reasonable question. Okay, getting on to the exciting part here. Well, actually, if I may take a quick detour, you know, you have to ask yourself, all right, I moved to town in 2003 and I buy this lot, but not everyone is gonna say, oh, let's move a house, right? So I was living in Colorado, and in this small town I was in, there was some old coal mines out to the east. And they regularly moved houses out there. The coal would play out, and they'd slide all the houses to the next coal mine, or slide them all to the town, or whatever. So there was a guy in town named Doug, and Doug moved old houses. He loved to save old houses. So I just kind of I'm an engineer. I just saw this. I said, oh, that's kind of cool. So I saw this old house. This is an 1888 brick house, which in Colorado is ancient. Okay, there's very few, buildings of this. That's probably one of the oldest houses in that city. And it may not look like much. And again, here's the vision part. It doesn't look like much at all, right? But trust me, it turned out well. So these brick houses weigh a lot more. So you see how many cross beams you have to put a cross beam in every 3 feet. And brick will only fall in a 45, so you'll lose the brick in a little 45-degree pockets, but the whole house is not going to fall through these holes. But lifting a brick house is orders of magnitude more challenging and expensive than a wood frame house. So this was a fun project. There was a preschool next door, and we put a time capsule in, and the kids would watch it, and they put lessons around how to build it. And you can see when I lifted this started to fall apart, this beautiful front window. So I had to hire a mason experienced in this sort of thing to rebuild a little of that, things you don't plan on. That's part of the crazy. So, it's a ton of work, right? People thinking you're crazy. The inside was no better. Don't take this on for fun. So here's what you get though at the end of the day if you do it right. So this is now the building, and I rent it out as office space. I still own it. And people come in and they're just blown away. My tenants have an average life in this building of 10 years. I've got tenants in the basement. We carved out like a garden basement space. And people, last time I had to lease it, this little town in Colorado is red hot right now. I had 4 people just clamoring to get into this building. They wanted it so bad. And so to me, that's the charm. You can build a new building. People don't clamor over it. Then it's just price, dollars per square foot. But when you fix up something and it's as beautiful as this, A, you can get top dollar for it, and B, you don't have any trouble keeping your tenants. There's beautiful architectural features that sconce or whatever you call it. I saved that. Everything's new at this point. So that's what it looks like now. I mean, it is. I am very proud of it. I love it. It's right in the center of this town, and it's become this kind of we have a chiropractor and massage therapist and something downstairs and a bunch of therapists there. It's kind of this it's become this little holistic medical building, if you will. So that's kind of how I got the bug of moving houses. This was my first project. Verona was my second, but I've had some other little ones in between. All right, so let's get on to the main event. So, like I said, you turn the house into a truck, into a trailer. So that's my daughter and her friend. It was like 2 in the morning. We let them come out. Let me see if I got some better pictures of how this works. So yeah, these are the 2 main steel beams here. There's one here, and the other one, of course, is on the other side. And then they just strap these other steel beams across it, and then right in here is a ball that goes, like a trailer of a truck, right? If you're driving a truck and you back up to hook up to your trailer, there's a little ball hitch. And it's no different. You just turn the house, essentially, into a trailer, and then you back up a standard truck to it, and off you go. Nothing to it. Nothing could go wrong, right? What could go wrong? So yeah, this is, there again is the 2 main steel beams with the cross beams, and they just slid a set of wheels underneath it and connected them. Okay, so it's 2 in the morning. We got the road closed. We have to have a police escort. So we're waiting for the cops to show up. Girls are having fun. Starting to rain a little bit. So I'm sitting on the porch of Salzier here, which was that then. Wait for the police. Here we go. So yeah, they showed up and it was go time. And so I got a little sequence here. This is again me sitting on Salzier. Here we go. Here comes the house.
Whoa.
Around the corner. And we had a little discussion with the tree in front of Avanti's. That was one thing we didn't calculate quite right. So I forget if we had to cut off a limb. I apologize for that. Now we got past the tree. This is coming around the corner at the mobile station. I'm kind of running behind it with an early edition digital camera. That's why it's a little blurry. And it's 2 in the morning, and I'm nervous.
How fast are they going, Mike?
Oh, just a few miles an hour. The whole process might have taken an hour. You know, it's slow. You could walk it. You could walk with it.
What's the Bobcat for?
Just for moral support, I guess. Yeah, just to catch it if it falls. So yeah, there it is going down Verona Road. And then it was kind of weird. They just kind of pulled into the lot at a weird angle and said, "There you go, buddy. Let us know when you get your foundation bill." So there it sat, much to the city's chagrin, I'm sure, for a month or so. So, you know, now you got to build a foundation for it, right? So the house is sitting right here, just waiting for its foundation to be built.
Whose house was that?
Kind of at a weird angle. But this is where it looks like from my backyard. I want to get, there we go. So no, that's, hang on a second. There we go. So this was the tricky part, and I took this on. You have to build a foundation that fits the house. Very, you don't want to be off an inch or two. That's not good. And you have to make room for all of the different beams. You've got the main beams, which have to get cut into the foundation, and then all the cross beams have these pockets, and then you have to have a way of securing the house to the foundation. And so if you've ever heard the term measure twice, cut once, I measured 100 times before I cut, because I was the one that had to design the foundation and hand it over to the concrete guys, and they're just going to build it. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. So that was on me. I lost a few nights of sleep there, but got it right. So once you get your foundation built, now the house movers come back on time this time, shockingly, because they needed their steel beams back. So now you build up crib piles inside. Okay, they're pretty tall. You end up getting a really nice tall basement with these projects, because you start with a 8-foot form, but then you get a bonus 3 feet. So I've got nice tall ceilings in my basement. These are the guys out of Boscobel. They're still around. Make sure they have a permit. So there's the little manifold that drives the hydraulics. So now the house is back up on steel, and now we're sliding her over. So these are the slide beams, for lack of a better term. These are the main beams, and these are the cross beams. You do end up, you actually end up with 3 levels of beams. So now the house is being slid over the foundation, and it has to be right. It can't be off this way or this way or this way or this way. It has to be to the inch, basically. So, and that's on them. So here it is coming over. So that gentleman right there, he was the brains of the outfit, and these guys that have done it a bunch of times, they just know how to do it. There's the little car, if you will, that the house is riding on. It's got the rollers, and so these are the slide beams, and these are the main beams, and it's just you literally just take like a truck and you just push the house. It's on wheels. It's almost over. Now it's ready. First you got to get it hovering over in the right place, not twisted, not to the left, not to the right, before you can lower it down. So this is them, you know, the final kind of lowering process. So, fun little story. I was underneath the Colorado house, the brick house, right? It's got 100 beams there, and it weighs a ton. And the main house mover's assistant, kind of a rookie, decided to take the little control box there and did something wrong, and the whole house just kind of like jumped like a few inches, and we're underneath it. It scared me like crazy. But you do kind of get comfortable being under this. You trust the engineering that's gone on. So there it is, kind of, you know, hovering in space. And now she's down. You know, I didn't have any other pictures of that. That's it. You can see it's resting on the foundation now. And now they're going to just start pulling their beams out and getting onto Dodge. So yeah, now you see the beams are no longer holding up the house. It's now on the foundation. So yeah, now they're just going to pull up their beams and load them up on their truck and pulling out the crib piles. But you can see, besides this skid steer here, there's no cranes. There's not a lot. It's really those jacks and a bunch of wood. That's really the main, and someone with some know-how. Okay, so you know you're still not done with these projects. So again, if you think this is cheap and easy and fun, have fun. So because now you got to build a site, you got to build a parking lot, you got utilities. So you see the old Citgo station for you history fans across the way there. So this is just us, you know, now finishing it up, right? Building a parking lot. You know, a project. This is how a project comes together, bit by bit. So, let's see one more. So yeah, so here's what it looked like inside, you know, back to that vision. No offense to your family, because I had been like either toward renters or vacant for a while yet. So yeah, it was a bit of a mess, you know. It needed a lot of work, upstairs in particular. So, you know, we moved some walls, did some reframing. This part was in pretty good shape, the downstairs, and I'll show you what it looks like now. The kitchen needed to be totally gutted. I took on that. There's my old Newfoundland, wondering what I'm doing. Nice big tall brand new basement. That's kind of what I had envisioned at the Matt's house, but I understand the route it went. So that's what it looked like inside beforehand, and this is what it looks like now. It's beautiful. It's really, I mean, the old leaded glass, the floors, the woodwork, it's, you know, really comes together nice. This is the foyer, the front foyer, and I think there were 6 layers of flooring that I took up personally on my hands and knees, night after night. I must have pulled out 10,000 tacks, because they would tack one layer down and lay another layer down. And then I saw how fasteners grew over the years. You know, they started with staples and then they moved on to nails. But you know, you peel the layers back on these old houses, and these floors are resilient. You know, again, that's my office upstairs today. This is just some of the rooms. You know, put your IKEA furniture in there and make it new. So yeah, we cleaned it all up. You see even this down here, the heat registers, the old brass heat registers. We polished those up. You know, the doors, most of them were not painted, which was nice. You know, we put in a little bit of a kitchen. Got to have a stereo system to work. Yeah. So yeah, that's. Let me see here. I think that's all I have. So I'll answer any questions, and I also think we want to, there's some people that know more about this house here that want to come up and talk, and that'd be great.
If you have questions, thanks. I don't mind.
Test. Anyone have questions?
2000.
What year was it?
It was 2004.
Yeah, that's where this house is at.
Well, just so we can pick it up on the hearing thing.
Forget that.
I can imagine when it's rolling over the new foundation, then it has to be perfect, that it's not perfect when it's rolling in. How do you square it up so that it ends up perfect before it's lowered?
Yeah, and so they have to lift it back up and move those rollers and roll it a little bit this way, and they'll take the skid steer and just push on a corner.
So it's right here.
Just again, inch by inch.
Does Danny still live?
It's everything's in small
Does Danny
increments.
still live?
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Your
Did they
question.
say it? No.
When it first opened, it was a coffee shop, wasn't it?
Ah, yes.
I remember that going there.
Yeah. So this is that's a good lead in. So yes, my first tenant was well, other than myself was Retro Cafe, which was a fun place. Pat ran it. It didn't make it. He ran out of money before he ran out of coffee, I guess. But I collect some memorabilia from Verona, and so all of the commercial places, not all, but whenever a commercial place goes out of business, I try to grab some of their stuff. And so in the basement, I have kind of a man cave music room, and so I have the benches from the A&W root beer place, these big long benches. I have the sign from the old cafe. I have a number of fun artifacts down there. I don't have any pictures of those.
Mike, can you mention, just for our historical record, what businesses have been in there since you built it? Just the ones off the top of your head, just so we can write it down.
So, so Hankard Environmental is my company. I have a small engineering company, and our clients are across the nation. So I don't have like people coming in. I'm not advertising, so I don't really care about advertising for myself. Physical Fitness is my wife's company. She's in there. She's a financial planner. And then we tend to rent out the main level. And so it started out with the cafe, and then it went on to an insurance guy or two. But our new folks are Branded Image, and they're great, couple of great guys, Lee and Jim, and great tenants, and they love the old building too. I could tell when they came in, the previous people didn't really, they just were looking for a place, that they didn't have that love of the old building. And Jim and Lee, they get it, and so they enjoy being there, and their clients enjoy it.
Questions? Oh, here you go. Laurie.
Was the 2 a.m. move time just planning for traffic, or was that how long it took to get the house up?
It was planning for traffic. The city, it's one thing you find when you do a house move is nobody knows how to treat you. You go to the city to get a permit. There isn't a permit, or you go to talk to the building inspector about things, and it's just nobody knows what to do with you. So it's kind of like, do it at 2 in the morning when nobody sees, and just get this thing out of here.
Oh, question. Here you go.
Okay, what did it cost to do this compared to what it would have cost to just build a place like that?
Great question. It's not the cheap way to go. The move itself, that was only like, I don't know, $25,000. But you got to build a foundation, you got to build a parking lot, you got to rehab it. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars. You have to buy the property. Would it have been cheaper to build new? It's probably neck and neck. Probably a lot easier. But again, no client is going to walk in and say, oh, this is a lovely brand new building that you've built with regular old drywall and everything. They're just not. So that's what you get out of it. In my place in Colorado, people thought I was nuts, and for years and years and years, they were definitely sure I was nuts, but nobody's laughing anymore because it's worth a small fortune.
In that company that's in there now, Branded Image, what do they do?
They sell T-shirts, hats, uniforms, whatever a company needs printed up, marketing materials.
Okay. Thank you. Questions?
I have a question. Oh, there's one here in front.
Barb's got one.
Oh, okay. Did you have to use wood from
other projects, or was all the oak that you had was the original in the house?
It was all the original. That was, the downstairs had never been painted. That's one thing when I'm looking to rehab a house, has it been painted? The Hoffman house that I live in, that was one of the selling features for us. We walk inside and it's still the original woodwork. And it's, thank God, you know, nobody messed it up.
Yeah.
So on this house, the downstairs was in really good shape. The upstairs, I did bring in some new materials because it was a little rougher, but.
Hey, Mike, I just have to correct you on one thing. It's not the Huffman house, by the way. It's the Grobent house. The original owner of that house that you live in, it was built in the very early 1900s, around 1904 or 1907. Herman was a grocer on Main Street, approximately where World of Variety building is, with a partner, and it was a grocery store in competition with Miller's. And of course, back in those days, I grew up in that neighborhood, so I was in your house, bumming around when I was a little squirt. And so when you said Huffman House, I remember Huffman also, but actually, us old-timers would call it the Grobent House.
Could you spell that?
Grabant.
DT.
Grabant.
Grobent. All right.
Was Hoffman in there too, John? Was there
No, Huffman came later. Huffman
Grobent
came
House
much
was
later.
next to where-
Herman and his wife Lottie, who we called Snotty Lottie, by the way. And we called him Squirmin' Herman.
What do you call me and my wife?
I won't say anything until you move. But anyway, that's the history. And they lived there, oh gosh, I would say until the 60s.
Oh, wow.
Herman was very old. He was near 100 years old when he died. So anyway, just no big deal, but just
thank you, John.
Correct me on that.
And we have an interview with Lottie on our website from 1972. She talks about her and Herman. She doesn't mention that nickname, didn't come up. And we also have a video from a film of Herman talking about Verona history to a bunch of semi-bored elementary kids in the 60s, which is in our archives too. So if you want to see them again, we have it.
Cool.
Just a sidelight. You know where that house is, where Mike lives, and you know where the Baptist church is, which isn't very far. But Herman drove to church in a great big black Buick, and Lottie was in the back seat. Yeah, funny things you remember, isn't it?
Thanks, John. Other questions for Mike? This has been really fun. I was curious, would either of the previous owners of the house want to say just a minute on your memories of it? I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you mind? Yeah, if you say your name and what your tenure was. Thank you.
So I'm not a good speaker.
Oh, you guys started that. You're in. Yeah.
So my name is August Gerke. My father couldn't be here today for a family thing, but I appreciate you all being here. This means a lot to me, my mom, my sister. A lot of memories in this house. I appreciate.
Okay.
When did you live there?
Just take your time.
Obviously, he really enjoyed living there.
Augie, when did you live there?
I lived there from '83 to 2003.
Well, I'm Nancy Gerke, and my parents bought this house from the Stories in 1969. my family purchased the home from my parents in thinking back, I think 1983, no, 86. So we were the last family to live in the home, and it meant a lot to us to see the house saved and moved. So we really do appreciate that house still remains, although it has a different address now. But I brought with me the deed to the home back from the time that the property was plotted out. And it was first plotted out in February of 1848. And then we have all of the owners over the years. This is an original document, actually typed, and then also there's signatures and different things in here that were written in pen and signed. So we have all of the owners. I just found out today during this conversation that James Sinan built the house. So if that's the case, he first took ownership of the property in 1912. So that would be my guess of when the house was built was 1912, 1913, somewhere in that range. So it was really interesting to have this document. I can't remember how we came by it. And so I don't know if anyone remembers if this was just plotted out in 1848. Is that the year that Wisconsin became a state?
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. I didn't make that connection until today. But have a lot of memories in that house. The old pink room that Mike referred to was my bedroom. We moved out, we sold it to Miller's in 1996, and so he rented for a number of years before it was moved. So I imagine it was probably in pretty bad shape if he had renters in there, but have a lot of memories, and I'd probably be still living in that home today had the neighborhood not changed as much as it had back then. So.
Sorry, I regrouped myself. So, my father and my mother took so much love in that house. I feel that the reason why it's still standing today is because they did everything they could do to make that house beautiful. You can't fix something that's really bad unless it's beautiful. And my dad and my mom, they took care of that house, and I'm glad it's still here.
I just wanted to say, I'm Brenna Gerke. I'm now Siebold. I live in Mount Horeb, actually. And ironically, the house that we bought from my grandparents, the Schumann Street house, I then bought a house for my grandma in Mount Horeb. So we just keep buying each other's houses, I guess. But I really appreciate you saving the house. It was a really tough time for us moving out of that house. I mean, my brother and I, that's all of our childhood memories were in that house. And the house, I don't know if you know, back in the day, was known as the White House.
I had heard such.
Yes, there was lots of, I guess, parties and different fun things that happened at the house. So it was fun having, my dad's friends come over and kind of give us the history of the house. And I remember when we moved into the house, all the remodeling and different things that we had done, which I'm sure look now pretty out of date, but I remember the wallpaper, in my parents' bedroom and all the different things that we had done to fix it up. And so it was just kind of a shock at the time that we ended up having to sell it, that we didn't realize, all the things that were going to happen. All of our neighbors kind of disappeared one at a time. Marilyn Sarbacher lived right next to us in a pretty house, and she had cats that she would run on this clothesline. She didn't keep them in the house. They always just ran on their clothesline. And just lots of, fun memories of the neighbors. And slowly, like I said, the neighborhood dwindled. I remember the protesting of the home that was later destroyed. The Sharp house, I remember walking between the little alleyways and seeing the protesters with their, I'm sure it was probably some of you people, with their, trying to save the house and how beautiful that was. And it was just really sad for me to see all the older homes and Verona be destroyed, and a lot of them, I mean, I wish you could have seen all of the original houses that were on our block on Schumann Street. I mean, they're all absolutely gorgeous houses with the original woodwork, and so anyway, this is pretty much the only house I think that's primarily left from that neighborhood, with the exception of a few others that are still standing, which I'm really glad to see. So thank you again very much for doing that project, because now that I'm here and listening to it, it does not seem like it was an easy thing to do. So it does, just so you know, your efforts mean a lot to the people that shared a lot of memories in the home. So.
Thank you very much. Lori, do you have a question?
Did you know what they did with the McGuigan house? It was right in that neighborhood too.
All of them were.
They were torn down.
Carl Miller bought every home on that block, and every one of them was torn down.
Yeah, because there was a really nice house too.
They were all beautiful houses.
Yeah.
Brenda, we were classmates, weren't we? 97 or were you 96?
I was 98.
98 in Roanoke. Yeah. Okay, we were.
I know. I was looking at you, and I'm like.
Yeah, and I thought Randy Gerke Bragg. Oh yeah. And just for historical record, we have houses in Verona called White houses because the White family lived in them. There was a very historic White. This was not why that was called the White House, right?
No.
Okay, not that reason.
The house was white, and my brother was renting from my mother.
Oh, here.
This is probably not familiar with too many, maybe Jana, because she lived across the street in the Stewart house that's no longer there. But the house was rented out for a while from my sister and then my brother before we bought it. My brother lived there with a number of single guys in town. So I won't name any names, but there was a lot of partying going on in that house during that time. During some of the Verona festivals, someone would get on the loudspeaker and go, "Party at the White House." So everyone would show up there with beer, and I can remember being there, people putting cigarettes out in the carpet. They broke the banner, or the porch off, and all fell off. So there was a lot of activity during that period of time.
So white was the color of the house?
Yeah, the house was white. We had put the gray siding on it when we lived there.
Well, thank you guys so much for
And,
coming.
and if I may just jump in, I am carrying on the tradition of your brother. So when I bought my house, there was this, in my wife's mind, hideous bar built in the 50s downstairs, and she said, "Get that out of here." And I knew just the place to put it. So I brought it to the basement of the house that we've been discussing, which I've always called it the White House because of what you had told me, I believe. And so I have a man cave, and I have large gatherings. We've cleaned up the act, no more cigarettes in the carpet, but we do carry on having fun down there.
We have another family member here who owned it before the Gerkes did. Could you introduce yourself and mention when you were in the house?
My maiden name was Susan Meller. My parents bought it in 1946. My parents split up in, I don't know, when I was 8, and then my stepdad lived in there with my mother until it was sold to the Perry family. But somebody asked about the McGuigan house. It was almost identical to this one. The one thing that was different, we had this house you could access, you walked up to the attic from one of the bedrooms, and in the McGuigan house there was this curious little tiny little narrow stairs that were in the bathroom. But other than that, the layout inside the two houses was very, very much alike. So the McGuigan's daughter was a playmate of my older sister. Just before my parents sold that house, you mentioned Marilyn Sarbacher. The Sarbachers were our immediate neighbor. My birth father had a very difficult time with schizophrenia, and it turned out, I just learned in this last year from my older sister that the Sarbachers were our safe house. And my sister, who was only 4 years older than me, when she got a visual signal from my mother, would just quietly take my younger sister and I out of the house and over to the Sarbachers, and they would put us out of sight until it was safe to come back home. I never knew that until just now, and I'm in my 70s. But let's see, house-wise, I remember hearing that we moved into the house in late autumn, it was probably October of 1946, and my parents were moving from Chicago, and that Mrs. Simon had had a really nice cabbage crop that year, and it was still sitting and rotting in the garden. And so as city folk, what they remembered was a garden full of rotting cabbage. But, and the other thing, not really related to the house, my father was outspoken and had strong opinions. He really was a smart man. But anyway, he made the mistake when we moved to Verona of attending village meetings. And he was, I'm told, my mother felt that he was labeled as kind of a gangster from Chicago, not to be trusted. Where the house originally stood on the side street, I guess it's Park Street, so the Stewart House was on the corner, and next to them was the original fire station. And I think it fit 2 tiny little trucks, but the hobos used to go in and they left the door unlocked, so the hobos would go in and sleep on top of the fire truck, and if they rolled over, they would activate the fire siren. But anyway, my final comment is, my mom died in 2005, just short of her 90th birthday, and after her funeral, our sons and their cousins who were scattered across the U.S. Chose to go and have an evening meal at that little cafe that was briefly there. And that is probably the last time those cousins will ever get together again. And then my mother's birthday would have been September 1st of that year. My husband and I, my stepdad, and my brother-in-law from Hawaii, my sister couldn't come. We went and had an evening meal on Mother's birthday in an upstairs room. It's the one that had the bay window in it. That's the room that we were served in, and we were all sitting there eating, and it was really quiet, and it turns out we were all thinking, this room is not nearly as big as we remember it. Because I can remember there being 3 beds in there when all the children were in that room during cold winter weather. We'd close the bedrooms off and have just all the kids in one room, but it was good to have that house at that time as my mother passed on.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. Yeah, do you have a question?
I had a question. You have the history of the beginning of the house. Is there anything in there that would say this was a stick-built house from the builder, or whether it was a Sears house? It has this look of one of the old Sears house that people used to buy their blueprints or buy the whole house from Sears catalog. And it has that look. Does anyone know any history on that?
I was trying to find it on our computer. I don't know where I got it from, but it was either my niece or a sister sent some layouts of Sears houses, and I could not find the document yesterday, but yes, the layouts of those Sears houses very much resembled this house.
My grandfather had one. There's a house similar to it right outside of Carnes by the water tower up on that hill. It's very similar in style to the house, so that must be another Sears house then.
There is a Sears house down here too.
Are you, Bernice, are you talking about the one on North Main Street? Or, I know there's a Sears house on North Main Street.
I can't think of the name of the street, but I know where I could drive to it. The Sears house.
Well, Mike, you called this a Foursquare house in your first email to me. I did a little Wikipediaing on Foursquare. It looks like they were popular in the early 1900s. Do you know, are you an architecture guy too? You're into old houses, or do you know about the Foursquare style? Is this something that maybe Sears used because it was popular, or where'd you get the term Foursquare from?
I'm not an architectural guy.
Okay.
I don't necessarily, but I do. I you know, in my office, everybody has a corner office, which is great. So I don't know. I mean, you come to the top of the stairs and there's 4 rooms. It's just, you know, it's kind of a convenient design, really.
Yeah. Any other questions for Mike here before we wrap it up and come up and talk to him in person? Well, I think what we've learned is you made the right call by not building new, because like none of this would have been said today, or none of these special memories would have been shared if you had just built this house new. So everyone, thank you very much, Mike, for coming in today and sharing stories.
Johnny's in the basement mixing up the medicine. I'm on a page.